questions, you could have two very quick answers, and that would be the final one.
Guten Abend, Herr Brokaw und Herr MacNeil. Ich bin Eileen Marty, and I'm a good friend of your colleague Klaus Kleber, formerly of ARD and now from ZDF. And my question to you revolves around your statement earlier, Tom, regarding the fact that the real news story was the decision by the East Germans to change their immigration policy, rather than the very symbolic and beautiful fact of the tearing down of the Berlin Wall. What are your concepts, both of your concepts, on what led them to make that decision, that momentous announcement that evening that you happened to be there to?
Well, I think a couple of things. That it was chaos in the eastern sector. Also, I've thought about it a lot. I went back to see Schabowski a year later, and he had no idea what he was announcing. He didn't have any idea of the effect of it. They honestly believed, and this was the distorted thinking, that the citizens of the GDR would go out to the wall and then come live happily at the end of the day back behind the wall again, and that they would come and go. There was something else going on at the time. There was a true unraveling of the ideological militancy, I suppose you describe it, in East Germany. Honecker had been booted out. Egon Krenz was not, he was just a bureaucrat, not very well, not very skilled. So in a social Darwinistic way, you had the devolution of leadership. These were people who didn't know how to manage things. And they had in the Soviet Union this man, Mikhail Gorbachev, who was saying it's a new day. We're going to have perestroika and glasnost, the ability to express yourself. I was reading something this week, getting ready to go back to Berlin, and there was at that time of great turmoil, somebody had gotten into East Germany, and they were looking, actually had been living in East Germany, and they noticed a long queue, a long line in a marketplace, and they thought it was for some goods that may have gotten in from Cuba, some fresh oranges, and they had some scarcity. And when they got to the front of the line, these were East Germans buying pins with Gorbachev's picture on them, because he had a different attitude about how they should live their lives than their masters. But it was one of the best 4 or 5 days of my life for a lot of reasons, but after we got to the wall and got that story all wrapped up, the same young woman, Michelle Newberg, was reading the German newspapers, and she said, "Oh, I know where we're going tomorrow morning." She said, Marcus Wolf, the great, great master, the East German spy, the head of Stasi, who was Carla in all the Jean Le Carré novels, was speaking at a small theater in the eastern sector. He had already tried to reform himself at that point, and he'd written a book. And I went over and interviewed him. And he was this very dramatic-looking guy, and he said, "I've known this was going to happen for a long time." And then I said, "Well, who else can we find?" And there was a famous spy scandal in Germany. And Willy Brandt was the Chancellor of Germany. The Stasi penetrated his office. And the man's name was Guillaume. And I found him. And he was living on a dacha deep in eastern Germany. And I went out to see him. And he was unrepentant. This is a terrible mistake. Socialist revolution should go on. I don't believe in what is happening here. So it was a memorable time.
Just a few more antecedents. The Helsinki Accords, which don't often get as much attention as they deserve, where the Soviet Union, prompted by the propaganda presence of Andrei Sakharov and others, had at least been forced to publicly acknowledge human rights as a basic human rights. Now, it was ironic and everything else, but they did it. Poland erupted and could not be put down. There was a point at which it looked as though the Poles might declare martial law, the Soviet communists might declare martial law. They did not. The Czechs opened their borders, the Hungarians opened their borders, and the Soviet tanks, unlike 1956 and 1968, did not come in and stop it. And there was Gorbachev in Moscow, who if individuals deserve enormous credit for their statesmanship at their time, is ability to see and to counsel the East Germans to cool it and not to repress this motion. All those factors.
We could stand here all night and listen to these two, I think. On behalf of the Newseum, we'd like to thank Tom Brokaw, or Neil, for your generous donation of time, and we'd like to thank our audience for joining us in this remembrance for the Berlin Wall.